I now call to order the February 24th, 2026 Board of Trustees meeting, time being 6:30 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance. Flag. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Cannon.
Here.
Trustee Daly.
Present.
Trustee Moyer. Trustee Teets.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason.
Here.
Mayor Shosse.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any amendments with the agenda this evening? Any conflicts of interest with the agenda this evening? No. All right, now will be time for public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak on non-agenda items, please sign at the sheet. State your name for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes. Okay. No public comment. All right, first off, we will have a presentation. Ms. Kelly Houghteling, Deputy Town Administrator, will present on Home Rule Overview and Engagement Plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Board of Trustees. Kelly Houghteling, Deputy Town Administrator. So since our last meeting in December, I said that we would come back to you and talk about the process that we would be doing for home rule education and planning for that. So since that time, we did a request for quotes. We interviewed qualified firms and selected Slate Communications with subcontractor Magellan Strategies. They have done this for other municipalities in Colorado. This is a very niche type of survey and engagement. So we needed to have a firm that had that type of experience. So with that, in talking with them in our kickoff meetings, they indicated that other successful type of ballot questions that they suggested doing a survey first and then followed by education. And the point of the survey first would be to find out a little bit more about what is your knowledge base already of this topic for home rule? What level of trust do you have? Understanding potential favorability, and then looking for gaps. And so using that survey information to then go out and then help with the public engagement. Magellan, the way that they do that their statistically, or the way that they do their survey is they do, the goal is to collect 400 respondents to ensure reliable data. And so this is a random sample of registered Wellington voters, and it is sent via text message. And that's enough of a sample size to then get a good base of the registered voters to see what their understanding is of the topic. So following this survey will be kicked off. You'll see something, some people may see something via text message next week. This will kick off in March, and we'll have results later in March. And from that data, we'll be able to work with Slate to start doing the public education campaign and working with the public. And then that would go back to the board here later. There's election potential timeline. So the Board of Trustees would need to vote after that time of go or no go. Is this something that you all would put on the election after that date? And that's all in the packet. Are there any questions about the process?
Any questions?
I just had one clarifying question, Ms. Houghteling. Are they looking for 400 responses, or are they only soliciting?
Sorry, I said that wrong. 400 responses. So it will get sent to a larger sample size, but they're looking for 400 responses. Thank you for clarifying that.
No questions.
Thank you. I'll continue to keep you informed on this process.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, we have Mr. Nick Redavid, the Finance Director and Town Treasurer. He's going to be presenting on the Town of Wellington, Colorado financial statements with independent auditor's report for December 31st, 2024.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. As was just said, I'm Nick Redavid, Finance Director and Town Treasurer. Thank you for your time tonight. It's my honor to share that as of February 9th, 2026, the Town of Wellington, Colorado financial statements with independent auditor's report for fiscal year ending December 31st, 2024 has been submitted to and accepted by the Office of the State Auditor for Colorado. It is included in the packet for tonight's meeting, is posted to the Finance Department page of the town's website, and is available on the State Auditor's website. When I joined the town as finance director in late April of 2024, catch-up was already underway on significantly past due audits. Consultant Don Rhodes worked diligently as interim town treasurer to get the audit of financial statements of fiscal year 2021 completed, which was initially submitted February 27th, 2024, and subsequently revised June 7th, 2024 by Mayberry and Company. In the time since, the Finance Department has seen 100% turnover, and a new auditor was contracted by the board for audits beginning with fiscal year 2022. Following a rigorous onboarding process, internal control review, and testing of financial reporting and record keeping, Hinkle and Company has completed the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2022 on January 31st of 2025, and the audit of fiscal statements for fiscal year 2023 on June 26. As I shared at that time, delayed revenues of $2.2 million in property taxes from Larimer County and $477,000 in Conservation Trust Fund revenues from the Colorado Department of Local Affairs were released. Now, with the completion of the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2024, the town of Wellington is in compliance with all state audit statutes and requirements. This is an accomplishment I'm proud to be part of and will be the expectation going forward. For the financial statements of fiscal year 2024, the auditor issued an unmodified or clean opinion in their independent auditor's report, stating that the financial statements for fiscal year 2024 were presented fairly for the respective financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, and each major fund. Governmental activities take place in the general street and park funds and include departments such as administration, library, recreation, and others. Business type activities occur in the water, sewer, and drainage funds. The respective changes in financial position and cash flows for the year were represented fairly as well, and in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, according to the auditor's report. Additional comments from the auditor in the required communication letter include that no matter came to their attention that required them, under professional standards, to inform the board about significant unusual transactions or controversial or emerging areas for which there is a lack of authoritative guidance or consensus. They state they were pleased to report that no disagreement with management arose during the course of the audit, and they encountered no difficulties dealing with management. Material adjustments were brought to the attention of and corrected by management as expected. A number of points are described in the Management Discussion and Analysis, or MD&A, that follows the independent auditor's report. The MD&A is required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board and follows a specific format with required information outlined in the Blue Book from the Government Finance Officers Association, known as the Governmental Accounting, Auditing, and Financial Reporting Book. The MD&A was reviewed by the independent auditor prior to publication for completeness and accuracy. The MD&A also explains the accrual basis of accounting and economic resources measurement focus found in government-wide financial statements. Modified accrual basis, as found in the monthly treasurer's report and frequently discussed, focuses on the current financial resources available. The full accrual basis found in the financial statement tracks economic activity. To convert modified accrual to full accrual, assets and liabilities that were recognized under the former, such as receivables and payables, are added in the latter and adjusted accordingly in revenues and expenses. This complex and time-consuming process is an important aspect of the independent auditor responsibilities in preparing the town's financial statements. Of note from the independent auditor's report, the MD&A and the financial statements for fiscal year 2024 are the total net position of the town for all funds as of the end of the year was $107.3 million. Current assets totaled $38.9 million, including $27.6 million in pooled cash and investments across all funds. Net investment in capital assets grew by $10.2 million to $77.3 million total, which is 72% of the total net position. Nearly $25.5 million, or 23.8% of the total net position at year end, is unrestricted funds that may be used to meet the town's ongoing obligations to citizens and creditors. Funds restricted for emergencies, streets, and open space and parks are an additional $4.5 million. The fund balance for the general fund was directly impacted by the delayed property taxes and dropped to $6.7 million in 2024. The ending fund balance for all governmental funds was $14.4 million. Enterprise, excuse me, the enterprise fund's total net position, also known as fund balance, at year end was $75.6 million, an increase in net position of $1.1 million. The water fund grew to $49.3 million. And as recently discussed during the municipal utility rate and fee study, there were losses in both the sewer and drainage funds. Outstanding debt at year end in governmental funds decreased by over $250,000 in regular payments on current obligations with no new debt. As shared in previous presentations and stated again tonight to ensure clarity and consistency, independent auditors only present opinions in the basic financial statements. Required supplementary information, while included in the auditor's report and utilizing the same audited numbers in the basic financial statements, no additional opinion is presented on those statements specifically. A new part of the financial statements for fiscal year 2024 is the compliance section containing the single audit. A single audit was required for the first time due to the expenditure of federal funds authorized by the American Rescue Plan Act, distributed by the Colorado Department of Local Affairs through the state and local fiscal recovery funds program. In total, the town was awarded $2.7 million to the water fund in 2021 and 2022. For fiscal year 2024, the town reported the funds fully expended, electing the standard allowance for $10 million or under as revenue replacement. The auditor's report states the town complied in all material respects with the types of compliance requirements that could have a direct and material effect on each of its major federal programs. It also noted no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in financial reporting or internal control over compliance. Given the auditor's opinion that the financial position of the governmental activities, the business type activities, and each major fund were presented fairly for fiscal year 2024, no adjustments to the town's current budgeted programs or projects are necessary at this time. Estimated beginning fund balances for the 2026 budget were developed using the ending fund balances from the audited 2023 statements, the ending fund balances from 2024 that have now been audited, and the estimated ending fund balances from 2025, which will be audited as normal this spring. In preparing for the 2027 budget, ending fund balances from completed audits will be used to provide an updated and sound estimated beginning fund balance. Lastly, on tonight's consent agenda is a request to authorize the town treasurer to sign an engagement letter with Hinkle and Company for the audit of financial statements for fiscal year 2025. GFOA best practices recommend that governmental entities should enter into a multi-year agreement of at least 5 years in duration when obtaining the services of independent auditors. 2025 will be the 4th fiscal year with Hinkle and Company. GFOA further states such agreements allow for greater continuity and help to minimize the potential for disruption in connection with the independent audit. Multi-year agreements can also help reduce audit costs. It's my opinion that continuing the contract with Hinkle and Company will ensure the process for the audit of financial statement for fiscal year 2025 is completed in a timely manner to remain in compliance with state requirements. The engagement letter estimates a fee of $30,800 for fiscal year 2025, which has already been appropriated in the budget for fiscal year 2026. Thank you again for your time tonight and your continued support. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Okay, Trustee Gannon.
I don't have a question, Nick. I just wanted to make a statement that, in the past 2 years, we've been able to make up 3 missing audits, from the previous board. And quite frankly, I'm very happy to hear the results of all 3 of these audits. There's a lot of rumors running around that Wellington isn't controlling their money. There's missing money here and so forth. You see it on Facebook all the time. There is no missing money. We are managing the town resources correctly, accurately. And quite frankly, you and your team have done a great job since you've come on board of making sure that we get these audits complete, and that the money that was withheld from not completing audits is finally back in the town coffers where it should be. So thank you so much. And everyone take note, there's nothing wrong with Wellington's money. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Teets.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with it. We just need more of it. So my only question comes from under the line item governmental funds. It says that the combined governmental fund balances ended 2024 at 14.4 million, decreasing 3.2 million from 2023.
Correct.
And on that next line, it says general fund ending balance 6.7 million, a decrease of 2.6. My question is that first bullet point, the 3.2 million, is that including or lack of that 2.6 million that we were able to collect for the property taxes?
So we collected the property taxes in 2025. So
Correct.
that 3.2 million does include that.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
That was my only question.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate it. And I'm very happy with the results as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You already know what I'm going to say. I've said it about 1,000 times. Great job to staff. Great job to the leadership team. And Nick, you've been an absolutely invaluable resource to the team. So really appreciate all the hard work and look forward to getting done next year's. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nick. You've been great.
Thank you.
All right, on to the consent agenda. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title of the items on the consent agenda?
February 10th, 2026 Board of Trustee meeting minutes and consent to authorize town treasurer to sign Hinkle and Company PC engagement letter for the audit of 2025 financial statements.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Ms. Clerk, make it a roll call, please.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. All right, on to action item. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E1?
Ordinance number 01-2026, an ordinance establishing fees to be charged by the town of Wellington, Colorado for utility services.
Thank you. And then Ms. Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works, with Mr. Nick Redavid, will present on this ordinance.
Good evening, Mayor and Trustees. Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works, and behind me I have Mr. Nick Redavid, our Director of Finance. Tonight we are presenting the recommended 2026 water, wastewater, and stormwater rate adjustments. These recommendations do reflect outcomes of the 2025 utility rate and fee study, as well as board direction received by staff at work sessions held on December 16th and January 20th. And a subsequent presentation at a regular meeting on February 10th. So the purpose of tonight's presentation, we will review those recommended rate adjustments for all three municipal utilities. We'll look at some summarization of some bill impacts, primarily for single unit residential customers. We will also share some peer comparisons for context, peer community comparisons for context, and conclude by seeking public comment and board adoption of 2026 rates. So for our water rate adjustments for 2026, the recommendation does keep the existing residential water rate structure, both for single unit and multi-unit. The recommendation moves both commercial and irrigation customer classes to a uniform volumetric rate. You will also see that the single unit residential, commercial, and irrigation classes will all receive a 3% revenue reduction, so a 3% in needed revenue reduction, while the multi-unit revenue would stay level to continue improving those cost of service alignments across customer classes. Here you can see the existing versus proposed rates for our residential customers, where you can see that residential base charge for both single and multi-unit would decrease by 3%. You'll also see a change in the volumetric tiers for multi-unit customers, shifting to better align with the cost of service. And you can also see that the tier 1 stays consistent at $0, or essentially that essential up to 3,000 gallon usage is included in that base rate for both residential, single unit and multi-unit residential. The proposed commercial base rate, turn my page here. Commercial tiers were consolidated into a single uniform volumetric tier. The same was done for the seasonal two tier thresholds or tier classes that were for irrigation before, the summer and winter, consolidated to a single uniform volumetric rate. Base charges for all meter sizes have been decreased by 3%. And you can see in our next slide that these changes do maintain stability while helping align some of the cost of service findings. Now, these financial plan impacts show that the recommended rate adjustments affect long-term sustainability of the water fund, and that reduction in revenue for those certain classes, we are still able to do so while maintaining financial stability. And you can see those fund balance numbers in the upper left of the screen, and then comparing to our debt service coverage requirements there on the lower right. Now, as part of our financial planning policy, our debt service coverage target is 1.25, while our loan requirement is only 1.1. So the line you see there is that financial policy adopted by the board of 1.25 for our utility funds. Our wastewater rate structure for residential customers really remains consistent. It stays at a base charge plus a volumetric charge that's based on the average winter consumption. Here in Wellington, that average winter consumption is the volume of water usage for January, February, and March. These updates do show some refinements for cost allocations, but not a structural change across the residential classes. But the major change really comes as an introduction of strength-based surcharges for our commercial customers. This better aligns revenue requirements with the treatment burden. So it's not just about the volume of flow that goes to the water reclamation facility, but it's the concentration of pollutants in that flow that really drives treatment processes. And this rate structure creates a great deal of equity across those customer classes, ensuring that those that drive the higher treatment costs are paying for that burden. Again, a snapshot of wastewater financial plan impacts. You can see in the upper right, our fund balance is not necessarily the issue at hand. It really comes down to ensuring that we can consistently meet our targeted debt service coverage requirement. I didn't touch on this in the water fund as it wasn't quite the issue, but you can see that when excluding tap fee revenues, even with the projected rate increases of that 18% increase in 2026, this modeling does reflect a subsequent 10% and then 8% increase in 27 and 28. And you can still see that without tap fee revenues, we're not meeting that debt service coverage target on just rates alone. Our storm drainage, this is the town's first stormwater rate adjustment since 2017. This rate increase would help to support O&M and projects, so operations and maintenance in the drainage fund, as well as projects that are identified in the 2023 Storm Drainage Master Plan. This is moving that residential stormwater rate from $5 to $6.25, and then from commercial from $9.25 to $11.56. Now, this rate increase really only increases revenue to the stormwater fund by about $50,000 annually, which is not enough to fully fund the current capital plan. Staff is planning to return to the board in 2026 with project prioritization updates as we figure out which of those projects are going to be the most important to ensure that we can build as we're moving forward. These assumptions that were used in developing this model do have some assumptions that were based on expected closure of Box Elder Stormwater Authority, which is also a moving target and continues to be a bit, though we are getting closer and closer. So I do want to show some residential utility bill impacts. We're going to start with looking at residential water use distribution statistics. So this is a lot of numbers and words on a page, but I wanted to make sure that it could be reviewed on its own without having to have my words accompanying it. But looking at this, just to kind of ground yourself, this is 3 years of residential, single unit residential bills issued by the town. So 2022, 23, and 24. So over 144,000 bills go into this data set. Just for example, to help ground you on the plot, you can see there that at the 3,000 gallon level, 18% of single unit bills were exactly for 3,000 gallons, which is that tier 1 threshold. Other demarcation notes on that graphic, 50% of all bills are for 33,000 gallons or less, with 95% of all bills coming in at 15,000 gallons of usage or less. Now, the single unit residential water use profile that you see here was built upon, included in your packet material, which the tables are just too tiny to try and put in a slide deck, but were the bill comparisons, single unit, multi-unit commercial bill comparisons, month by month for an average user across different user profiles. What I did here is actually plot those four user profiles, water use profiles for single unit residential. So you have the low user, which has 23,000 gallons in a year. So annual usage is 23,000 gallons. An average user with non-potable irrigation with that average annual use total of 47,000 gallons. And you can see the pattern of use. And then you see an average user with potable irrigation. You see that increase, more pronounced increase in the summer months. And what we're looking at is a higher user, which is the average of the top 10% of our single unit residential customers using about 140,000 gallons in a year. I wanted to provide a snapshot of what the overall rate impact, or excuse me, overall municipal utility bill impact would be, or could be expected to be under these different user profiles. So on that table, on the far left, you have the user profile title. There in the middle, average winter water use. The reason I included that is because that's what we use, again, to calculate the wastewater portion of the municipal utility bill. The far right two columns just give you some brackets of information around the expected average increase to a monthly utility bill, as well as the range of increase that you might expect, because based on that usage pattern, of course, some of those increases could be higher or lower over summer or winter months. So I wanted to summarize that just so we could really see the range of impact of the proposed municipal utility bill in total. Diving into some peer utility comparisons, I did want to take just a brief moment. The community, Wellington, as you all are more aware than anybody, has had experienced a lot of change in their water rate structures over the last 5 years. In 2022, if you remember, I believe it was, I came on board at the end of 2021. And in 2020, I believe during COVID of all times, there was a pretty significant rate structure change that went into place, increasing our base rate up to $66 for all customers, residential customer types. That was the driving purpose for the direction that the board at that time in 2022 gave to staff to do a holistic, intensive, full rate and impact fee review of both water and wastewater. So as we kind of go through these next slides, I'm going to use my words to make a couple of comparisons to what things would have looked like under these same scenarios in 2022 as well. So this is what we're looking like for some peer utility comparisons for 3,000 gallons of usage right now. Wellington's at the bottom of that list, if you can believe it. In 2022, 3,000 gallons of usage would have cost a customer in this town $79.68. So that's been that's a 33% decrease for those lower end users from where we were 4 years ago. And that's really in an effort and a drive by that board at the time to right size and ensure that customers are paying for their impact onto the system. 5,000 gallons, we start moving up the list a bit. Still down there in the bottom half, if you can believe it, both existing and proposed with that rate revenue reduction. In 2022, again, that bill would have cost a utility customer, just the water portion, $88.80 here in Wellington. So again, a pretty significant increase, $10+. Moving on down the line, you see us moving up faster as we get into those higher volume users. The structure that's currently in place does place a higher burden of cost. Instead of a kind of declining block rate structure, this is very much an incline block rate structure. The more you use, the more you will pay. So just as an example, under that former rate structure, customers who used less water paid significantly more per unit for that water than those who used large volumes. So for example, in 2022, a 3,000 gallon user paid a per unit equivalent of $26.56 per 1,000 gallons, whereas someone who used 25,000 gallons only paid $7.66 per unit under that, what would be really identified as a declining block rate structure. So it really does not incentivize different water use patterns. It disincentivized it. The more you use, the cheaper it got. Moving on to our wastewater rate structure comparison. We are moving up in the world along with many of our neighboring communities. A couple of folks there's one community on this list had a 40% rate increase to get where they are right now. They're looking at another 20% next year as well. Significant rate increases across the region as more and more wastewater treatment facilities are being expanded. That trend will continue for the next, I would guess, 5 years. And here we are in comparison to with regional stormwater rates. Not as many communities have their own stormwater entity, stormwater enterprise, but we're right there in the middle, even with this rate increase. So at that point, I'm happy to stand for questions if you have any.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this? Trustee Ken?
No questions at this time. I'd like to hear from public comment first.
Okay. Public comments on this item. We're given 3 minutes to speak. Sign at the podium.
Hello, my name is Rob Robinson. I live in the Meadows here in Wellington. I would like to delegate my time to Jim Raymond if that's possible.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening, James Raymond, Iron Horse Way. Been here a time or two. Hopefully this is the last time. I want to talk about the water rate structure. The current water rate structure was designed during a time when the water treatment plant had throughput constraints. It was structured to discourage high volume users because the system could not properly handle additional demand. That made sense at the time, but today throughput is no longer a constraint. The plant has been updated. Wellington is open for business. If the operational condition has changed, it is reasonable to review the water rate structure built around it. Between 2022 and 2024, the town issued 100,444 573 single unit residential water bills under this water rate structure. We now have multiple years of detailed billing data. The level of this clarity was not available when the water rate structure was originally developed. Exactly 72,287 bills, 50%, were at or below 3,000 gallons. 95% of the residential bills fall within 95% of the residential bills fall within 15,000 gallons or less. That data reflects reality. The overwhelming majority of residents are low to moderate water users. The water rate structure should reflect where the vast majority of the residents fall while remaining fair across all usage levels. Not be structured primarily around the top consumption bracket. Now the town has discussed a potential 3% reduction in water rates. That may provide a short-term relief, but the water rates will increase in the future. The question is not whether they will increase. The question is when and how much. Without structural alignment before the next increase, future rate increases build on top of a structure that has not been properly aligned. Addressing that structure now, before the next increase, keeps the future adjustments measured, predictable, and fair. The direction the RAG committee took regarding the water rate structure was simple. Users should pay for what they use. Not more, not less. Users should pay for what they use. Water rates should align with the cost of service. They should not over-collect from low-volume users, and they should not be built around isolated extremes. The RAG Charter states that the community should have a voice in decisions that affect them. The RAG Committee reviewed the water rate structure data and brought forward a recommendation. Allowing the RAG Committee recommendation to receive a formal vote honors the Charter's commitment to giving the community a voice. It's not about politics. It's about alignment. It's about fairness. It's about getting the water rate structure right. The numbers aren't emotional. They're definitely not political. They are simply the reality of how the Wellington community uses water. The data is clear. Fairness requires alignment. Let the recommendation receive a vote. In closing, a mentor once told me, facts matter more than opinions. I just presented the facts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Christine Gator, I'd like to yield my time to my husband.
John Gator, live in downtown. So good evening, board. I do want to start by saying something positive. I'm glad that we were able to do a 3% rate reduction. I will say, though, that a 3% rate reduction on a broken rate structure is still a broken rate structure. Let me be clear, the board's decision to keep the current rate structure in place had nothing to do with the RAG recommendation. At the last meeting, a trustee stated that this 3% decrease meets the goals of the RAG committee. That is categorically false. Discounting a broken rate structure fixes nothing. The rate structure advisory group spent months reviewing Wellington's water rate structure. We were guided by a set of pricing objectives that we developed alongside Raftalis, building on the values that were established by the previous advisory group and adding to them. Tonight, I want to focus on two of those pricing objectives: recovery within customer class, as well as ease of understanding. I hear the word equity used constantly in this town by board, by the staff, by candidates who are running for office. Everyone seems to love the word. You'll notice it doesn't appear in our formal pricing objectives. But cost recovery within customer class is equity. It means residents pay for the cost of the usage that they actually have and what they create. That principle isn't something new that we invented. This value is carried over from the previous advisory group. Based on the data we reviewed, Wellington's current rate structure is failing in this area. Through the data Raftalis provided, more comprehensive than what was been available for the previous boards, we discovered something that should trouble every one of you sitting up here. The current rate structure forces residents on both ends of the usage spectrum to carry a disproportionate share of the water cost burden. Costs that exceed what their actual usage demands. On the high end, the current structure punishes larger users through an aggressive tiered multiplier that escalates to 1.85 times the first tier, a ratio that is untethered from the actual costs of delivering water. On the low end, the current base rate bundles the first 3,000 gallons, whether a customer uses them or not, meaning our lightest users are paying for water they never turn on. Are some of the high users wasteful? Sure. But most are just average people trying to raise their families in Wellington and enjoying the nature on a large lot. The low users include our seniors, our veterans, individuals who just live by themselves and don't use much water. Both groups are quietly paying more than their usage demands, so the rest of us can pay less. In what world is that equitable? The Rate Advisory Group brought this board a unanimous recommendation. All 6 members representing diverse opinions, diverse backgrounds, and usage levels agreed it was the best path forward. Our proposal simplified the rate structure. It tied the cost to actual expense to deliver the water, and recognized that higher usage does place more strain on the system, so we accounted for it proportionally, not punitively. We flattened the pricing ratios from 1.85 down to 1.2 and eliminated the hidden subsidy buried in the base rate. Every single one of us on the Rate Advisory Group would have seen our own personal bills increase under what we put together. We supported it anyways because it was the right thing to do. I do want to acknowledge that the Mayor Pro Tem did point out that this change would result in nearly 90% of bills increasing by some amount. He's correct. But I want you to think about that. What that means is it means that the other 10% of those bills are currently subsidizing that 90% that would increase. They are paying for usage costs that are not theirs. And if you acknowledge that fact and still vote to do nothing, then please stop telling residents that you care about equity. Now, I expect I'll be told that subsidy is the wrong word, that the rate structure doesn't technically create a subsidy. Fine. Call it a cost shift, call it an intra-class burden, call it whatever you want. When one group of ratepayers is paying more than the cost of their usage so that others can pay less, the impact on the users doesn't change no matter what you call it. Now let's talk about ease of understanding, because if you can't explain a rate structure to residents in plain language, something is wrong. Try explaining to a senior in a fixed income why they're paying a base rate that includes 3,000 gallons of water, whether they use it or not. Try explaining to a family why their rate per gallon nearly doubles at an arbitrary threshold that has nothing to do with the cost of delivering that water. The current structure isn't just inequitable, it's confusing, and that confusion erodes trust. Our proposal was simple. You pay a base charge for being connected to the system, and then you pay for the water you use at rates that reflect what it costs to actually deliver. That's a rate structure you can explain to anyone in just one sentence. I just did. So why did this board reject our recommendation? Because it was easier to message no change than to fix the problem. Because in an election year, it's more politically expedient to kick the can down the road. You chose politics over policy. You chose easy over right. I have one more thing to say. I don't want to hear any of the members on this board who supported removing our recommendation from consideration claim that you value resident input. You had 6 volunteers spend hours of their personal time reviewing data, attending meetings, speaking to residents, and developing an actual solution, not a Band-Aid. You presented our recommendation to the public at one meeting outside of the work sessions, and then you decided not to include it as an option for the actual vote. You didn't disagree with our work, you simply decided it was inconvenient. The rate structure is broken, you know it, we showed you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Kendra Barrett. I would like to just make a quick comment on the assertion that it is no longer, or that the high users are subsidizing low users. The reality is that one of the huge factors in our cost for water rates is to accommodate high users with the development of the new treatment facility. The treatment facility is as large as it is to not only account for 20 years of growth, but also for high water users. So this increased dramatic cost, granted, there are many variables that attributed to this, were because of delays in capital projects, but also because we are still accommodating high water users. So the assertion that the high water users are subsidizing the lower water users is misguided. Thank you.
Thank you. You can do it after.
Sophia Moore, part of the group of people who participated in coming up with this recommendation for our water. And I just want to maybe put into perspective that I think we all spent a great deal of time together. We talked a lot about opinions and our own situations. Everything that brought us to this conclusion, happened over many great deal of meetings and many great deal of hours. I think that if you were allowed the same amount of time to discuss the different perspectives and the different variables, I also believe you would land at the same conclusion. It was not easy for any of us to set aside our opinions and to, I think I mentioned it at the beginning, if we all walk away a little sad, I think we've made the decision that we were, meant to do for the benefit of the community. I would hope to see that reflected in the acceptance of this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So we'll start with a motion and then we can discuss since we deferred to public comment. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 02-2026 and ordinance establishing, I apologize. Ordinance 01-2026 and ordinance establishing fees to be charged by the town of Wellington, Colorado for utility services.
Second.
Okay. Final comments, discussion. Trustee Buchanan.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work that the RAG group, all the effort went into this, the study, the review, and quite frankly, if we have a transparent process where we create a citizen board to study our ratings and make recommendations. And I, for one, will admit that you put a lot more effort into this than I would, just sitting here as a trustee. I find it sad that we would set up a transparent process and then just simply abandon it. This board gave the RAG group their marching orders. They gave them the parameters of what they were looking for. And these people made a commitment to study our water rates. And water rates are a hot topic in town. But I personally would rather go with the RAG recommendation than what's been presented here in this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you again to all of the RAG participants. I know that there was a lot of experience sitting on that board with relation to people involved in our town and in our community. It came from a community's voice, and there were all different aspects, all different kinds of people sitting on that committee that listened to over 5 months of information, crunching numbers to lead us to a unanimous decision presented by the rate advisory group. That is one of the reasons I requested at our previous meeting that we be able to bring forward it. If you don't want to vote, it's fine if you don't want to vote on it, but we dismissed it completely. And we just said, no, we weren't bringing it forward. It wasn't even an option or an alternative. And that was one thing that bothered me because it feels like a slap in the face to the hours and months of commitment and dedication that this board put into learning about these numbers in the first place. You understand 90% of what we understand 2% of, and you guys actually reviewing and understanding what's going on. So again, I will definitely say that I absolutely do. If it's presented as this, it will be a no vote, but I would like to be able to agree to have an amendment where we can also bring forward the RAG recommendations and be able to vote on that as well. Again, I feel that we are aware and we know that this is not equal, that we are knowing and aware that we have low-end users and high-end users that will be subsidizing that middle class. We know that there is something wrong. And if we go and we vote on this, knowing that it's not balanced, we're accepting that it's wrong. And we're going to do it anyways because it's convenient. And I can't in my heart of hearts say I'm okay with that. So I would love to see the motion be brought back with an amendment to consider. We can make that amendment after we vote on this one, correct?
It's so we need to go through this process. We need to go through the initial recommendation and the motion that was made, go through your comments and make the vote, and then we can go from there.
Got it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Wiegand.
First off, Megan, I appreciate all the work you've done. You've done great. But I really appreciate what the RAG committee has done too. We selected 6 people from the community. They worked their butts off. None of the pricing that they came up with was beneficial for any of the people. It was actually going to impact them negatively, but they came to the conclusion that this was a fair and equitable way of doing it. And again, I think that's what we're looking for. And again, when you start looking at the low use users being penalized the most, and again, those are the people probably that can least handle the penalty. Are we being fair? So I would have to go, and it's not that I don't want to, but I would have to vote no on the current thing because I would like to see the RAG come up. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Daly.
So the values that I've heard from RAG are definitely compelling. The thought of fairness of billing, of paying for what you're using, fairness across the different customer classes, all of that makes absolute sense to me. And given the opportunity, if every resident in the town of Wellington got to do a 6-month study, a dedicated study of why the rates are the way they are and what the opportunity was, they likely would come to that same conclusion. And I don't doubt that whatsoever. But the truth of what the situation is with households in the town of Wellington, and I'm talking about, you guys have made a committed decision of, I feel this is fair, so I'm willing to pay extra, right? That's a decision you've made, understanding the RAG structure. Not all the homes, especially the 90% that would end up paying more potentially, have had the opportunity to say and study and say, that's fair, so I'm willing to and excited to pay extra money. So I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's a scenario in which people maybe have that decision and choice. So those are the two sides of it. The rate structure, which isn't significantly different for most users, to be completely honest. I also acknowledge that. So I want to acknowledge and I love this transparent process. I'm the one, along with Trustee Gator, that brought the roundtable concept for utility rates to be studied by the community. And this is the second set of recommendations we've received. Our current rates are also based off of recommendations from the residents. So it's not that we are deciding to choose a resident's choice or just do whatever we want. We're choosing between two different groups of resident recommendations. So I do want to acknowledge that too. But with that said, I understand the concept of how the RAG structure is fair. I'm one of the users that would benefit from it because I'm a low water user. So I often pay for 3,000 gallons, even though I only use 2 throughout the winter. So I am the exact scenario of the person that you're acknowledging that has 3,000 to use within the essential use, but is only using 2,000. So I also want to acknowledge that I definitely understand that calculation and understanding. So what I also want to acknowledge is the structure and the rates that we're looking at today are not what were faced against RAG initially. We were given 2 options proposed before. We gave feedback, the idea of fairness across customer classes, and couple those things, and those went back to Raftalis. And what we see presented today is neither RAG or the original proposed option. It is a combination of both. So that is also consideration. We did take a lot of those things very seriously. So what I want to say right now is before us is an opportunity to decrease water rates by 3%. If we were to say no to that, we are not doing the community justice for these rates that would be potentially offering savings in the near future. But what I'm also saying is I don't want to give up on the RAG rates. I want us to continue exploring this and to see how we can implement that now with some other considerations that we have too, including the 3% less in revenue, which we didn't have as a consideration before. So to be able to look at those side by side and see what they are. But it would be a mistake today to say, I reject 3% savings. That would be a mistake to do because we would say, we're not accepting RAG necessarily. We don't have the information in front of us to do that tonight. That's just, we're not prepared to do that at this moment. And it wouldn't be transparency to the people who we would be voting for that they don't have those presented to them to consider. So we can't make a decision to accept RAG rates tonight. That's just not possible. But what we can do is decrease water rates by 3%. And that is good news. And then we can also commit to considering the different structure with the decreased revenue amount. And I think that that does justice to enabling savings that's possible today and not saying no to savings, because I really do think that's wrong, but also a commitment to making sure that we're pursuing a fairer option that's been submitted by RAG. But what we have to say is it's not going to be exactly as you presented it. We've had other considerations since then, but I think the pay per thousand is something to consider. In the past, we needed that essential use. We needed that because we needed to be sure of what we were receiving as revenue. We needed certainty in the rates that we were charging. It would be just, you don't know what you're going to get based on the weather or what. So in order to be strong for our fund, we had to make decisions, and that the case is different now. So I think we should consider it, but a no vote today says that you're not offering savings in water rates. So I think that we can approach both.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I do think it's unfortunate that we don't have a Trustee Moyer here with us this evening. I will say that if we do have this ordinance shot down this evening and a revised RAG rate structure ordinance comes before us, that is likely going to be shot down by a 4-3 vote. So I guess my question for you, Ms. Smith, is can the existing rate structure that we have on the table without the ordinance, the current rate structure, the one that we have right now, can that meet revenue requirements? If the RAG structure can't be adopted and this ordinance can't be adopted tonight, if they both get shot down, what happens?
We would go into 2026 with exactly the budget scenario and financial scenario we'd anticipated, because we didn't have rates before the budget was adopted. So revenue estimates were based on today's rates as they are right
Understood.
now.
So that will absolutely screw up the
No.
wastewater fund.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Okay.
If we don't adopt the remaining rates.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Look, I'm going to say this, and I do apologize to the RAG for not setting my expectations properly up front, because again, and I've said this multiple times now, I believe there's a philosophical difference regarding rate structures, and I don't agree with linear rate structures, right? The only notable Front Range communities I'm aware of without a tiered structure are Berthoud and Loveland, excluding Fort Collins Loveland Water District, right? So I'm also going to go on to say that the only I believe the current rate structure provides a certain amount of cost recovery when it comes to infrastructure for impact to the system based on volume. A linear structure does not do that. If I have a pipe of a fixed size of 1,000, or say any fixed size pipe, and I run 1,000 gallons per month through that for 10 years versus a pipe that I run 30,000 gallons a month for 10 years, that second one's, there's far more impact to the system by that amount of water. So a linear rate structure, I do not believe adequately provides for cost recovery when it comes to infrastructure impact. And I certainly cannot get behind a structure that's going to cause a $14.80 increase for your average 7,000 gallon per month user in the town of Wellington. So while I do understand the advisory group's point that to lower rates for your, if we want to do 1,000 gallons included in the base rate or whatever that might be, I understand that perspective. And I also understand the impact to the top tier users. But again, I'm going to say that I believe this is much more about cost recovery for infrastructure, and a linear rate structure is not the way to go. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, sir. I like the fact that we had citizens come out and work with Raftalis, spend your guys' time and give us a recommendation. I do appreciate that. I do believe that we had some scenarios that changed. We came up with what we have in front of us based off of information that you guys gave to us, and then the new information that was also given to us to have a reduced rate of 3% overall. I am in line with the higher users having a harder burden on the system overall when it comes to infrastructure. Water flowing at massive amounts will wear down pipes. We know there's sediment in our water. It's going to wear down much faster. The more water that's flowing through them, they're going to need to be replaced much quicker, right? So that's just the nature of the beast. So where I'm at right now is I am fine with what is proposed to us this evening, and I say we call the vote.
Trustee Teets,
No.
Trustee Wiegand,
No.
Trustee Cannon,
No.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that vote is 3-3 and that motion fails.
Can we take a brief recess, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, I was. No, but
I have a feeling I may understand what you're going to be asking. I need to talk to legal counsel and my team to see if it's something that we can accomplish. Go on ahead.
Can we not ask you for clarification, or do you need further discussion with our town administrator?
I don't know what the question or issues are, so happy to visit, happy to do it in open session too.
Go ahead.
So I don't know what the questions are.
Well, my concern is we've heard, and this is what staff has been working on for the past 3 meetings. We've received, the 3 times it's been brought up, we have received clear direction from a majority on how to move forward. So now we're talking about changing that. So I need to get with my team to see if amendments are going to be made, we need to make sure that we are handling cost recovery. We need to make sure that these are things that we can implement. If you're talking about changing a rate structure, is this something we can do with our utilities? So before we get too far in this, because it sounds like we might be changing some things, it's my job to make sure this is something we can actually do. And I want to make sure that that can happen. But if you want to go on ahead and have the discussion, that's fine. And then we can come back and let you know.
So do we just need to look at rescheduling this for the next meeting? Is that
Right now, I think let's go for a recess and then we can return and go from there.
okay?
All right. Now call the meeting of February 24th, Board of Trustees, 2026 back in session. And we have,
I have a motion. I move to adopt ordinance number 1/2026, an ordinance establishing fees to be charged by the town of Wellington, Colorado for utility services with the exclusion of section 1, which relates to water rates.
I second.
all right, Ms. Clerk, do I hear a roll call? Oh, Trustee Cannon. Okay. Yeah. So from understanding, that would be removing the water rate change whatsoever, keeping storm and drainage changes as proposed.
Correct. That is what we really need tonight. We can talk to you all later about the water utility piece. And right now we'll just go into the next billing cycle with our current rates.
Yeah, with a
for
topic
water
on that
utilities.
too, just for, as we're discussing this, it's really important, I think, that we do, if we're considering different rates, put them in front of everybody so they have the opportunity to see them, that we actually publish it, get it in a packet so that people consider how it impacts them so they can also come and speak on their behalf regarding water rate changes if it is significantly different than what we published. It's our due diligence to make sure that everybody in Wellington has an opportunity to review this. We have great input here, but everybody deserves that input. So that when we do discuss this in the future, we need to make sure that the public has the opportunity to consider it as well. So we're not ready to do that tonight, and we haven't put that material out for the general public with a different option yet.
All right, Ms. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse,
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you all for the opportunity for me to get back with staff and talk it through a little bit. I wanted
Yeah.
to make sure, and with our town attorney,
Thank
make
you.
sure we got the motion correct. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item E2?
Ordinance number 02-2026, an ordinance establishing capital investment fees to be charged by the town of Wellington, Colorado for connection to the water and wastewater utility systems.
Thank you. Ms. Megan Smith and Nick Redavid will present on this.
Good evening again. Not that I left. Again, Megan Smith, Deputy Director of Public Works. Now we're moving towards looking towards adoption and public comment for adopting updated water and wastewater utility impact fees. This presentation will present those recommended impact fees for 2026. Again, these reflect outcomes. These adjustments reflect outcomes from the 2025 rate and fee study, as well as board direction received at work session on January 20th and a regular meeting on February 10th. So the purpose of the presentation is to provide an overview of those recommended impact fee adjustments for both water and wastewater, explain the purpose and reasoning behind a new non-potable system water impact fee category, demonstrate how the updated fees align with state requirements, system capacity costs, and our already adopted rate and fee study methodology. What we replicated in 2025 was based on how the same methodology used in 2022. And then seek public comment and request board action to adopt the updated fees. So Colorado law actually requires that impact fees reflect the actual quantifiable impact of new development on utility capital facilities. These fees must remain legally defensible, demonstrating proportionality, a rational basis, and a clear nexus between growth and system costs. We have updated from the 2025 utility rate and fee study, we've updated system valuations, peak demand factors, and growth-related capital costs. And this does ensure continues to ensure that growth pays its proportionate share of facility costs and protects existing ratepayers from subsidizing new development. Now, Wellington developed as part of the 2022 rate and fee study, developed using a hybrid capacity-based methodology for calculating our impact fees for both our water and wastewater utilities. And this hybrid, as the name implies, has two separate components. There is a system buy-in piece, and this really assigns the value of unused capacity in our infrastructure and systems. And then also there's an incremental expansion piece that identifies future projects that are needed. As everyone knows, we have completed our treatment facility infrastructure projects. That creates a great deal of capacity. So there's that capacity buy-in piece, but there's also additional infrastructure that would have to be built with certain specific developments in town, whether it's upsizing pipes, larger pipes, additional pump stations, that sort of thing. So key updates. For the water impact fees, we are introducing a new fee category with this this impact fee update for non-potable developments. So what I mean by that is HOAs or other developments that bring in raw water systems such as wells or ditch supplies and are not using potable water for irrigation demand. These kinds of customers place a significantly lower peak day and peak hour demand on the potable system. Really, for example, based on the data analysis used for the study, our non-potable peak demand is about 45% of our potable peak demand. So it is that outdoor use and that summer irrigation use that drives that really high increase in potable demand. Creating this additional impact fee category improves proportionality and strengthens that legal defensibility under Colorado revised statute requirements. And you can see that the accompanying changes and proposed changes in the water potable system impact fee would go up from $11,507 to $16,312. However, that same single unit residential tap that would be tied into a non-potable system for irrigation would reduce down to $7,340 for that impact fee. Again, this is a repeat of the same set of slides, but both the rate revenue and the impact fee revenue are embedded in both these fund balance and debt service coverage graphics. I wanted to assure you that these were developed using, as I touched on at the presentation earlier this month, the water impact fees were assumed that more than 75% of our development coming in would be coming in using that non-potable impact fee. So these revenues do reflect that lower impact fee for the majority of development coming in. I wanted there to be able to see the impact on the fund. So the wastewater utility impact fees stayed fundamentally the same. The structure definitely stayed the same. They were really only updated with system valuations, capital improvement costs, and of course, inflation, which has slowed but is still increasing. Otherwise, the customer classes and calculation methodologies remain the same. Again, you'd see that 3/4 inch, so that single unit residential increasing from $10,740 up to $13,362. And similar to the water fund, this is just giving you a snapshot of wastewater fund plan impacts. As I highlighted before, the debt service coverage piece is what is the primary driver of the rate revenue increases that we're looking for in the wastewater fund at the moment. So I did create some peer community comparisons. This is the same slide that you saw at our last regular meeting. There are two now Wellington proposed categories there, one to show the impact of what that total impact, one to show the total impact of wastewater impact fee and a potable system water impact fee, and then one with the wastewater impact fee and a development using a non-potable system for irrigation. And at that point, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Questions from the board on this item? Trustee Teets.
I do have a question for you. Related to page 162 on the slide, it shows that we'll be charging the least amount for non-pot in all of these communities. So in asking that question, so these communities so when you look at the non-pot systems, I never got like a definitive from you from our last meeting on how we established what those fees were, how it was based. Is this an average? So when Reftalis does this report on fees of what are defensible, are we given an average and a hard dollar number, or are we given a scope of the number?
So included in your packet tonight was a technical memo describing the process by which they developed the impact fees for both water and wastewater, including the backbone infrastructure costs and the allocation and how those were developed.
Got it. But it didn't give if it was based off of a spectrum or if it was just a single definitive number.
So it did highlight that their recommendations come in at the highest defensible number. So it would become difficult to defend something higher than what they've recommended. However, it is a policy decision if the board should choose to adopt a rate that is lower than what was recommended in that packet.
Got it.
Right. So there is a balance that takes place between trying to encourage growth, but also to ensure growth pays for its way.
Got it. Thank you. That was my only question.
No questions? Okay. We'll now open up for public comment. Members of the public wishing to speak, state your name for the record. If you give 3 minutes.
John Gator, downtown. The only question that I had and concern is with moving to I totally agree with the non-pot being less of a strain than the potable. It's 100%. I have no disagreement there. The concern I have is that wisely, I think this town has been highly encouraging more non-potable systems because they're less of a strain on the system. I know Megan, I don't know if it was 70 or 75% that you're assuming is coming at the non-pot rate. I think it would be good to know what is our existing ratio on that? Because from my knowledge, most of the new building is almost completely non-potable. So my concern is that we may not hit revenue goals. And the reason with that is if we're doing this, we're placing a very heavy burden on the potable systems, which is going to discourage any developers that most of the time you can't go one or the other. It's usually one or the other, but it will discourage those builders who might be on the edge about building a potable system to just say, I'm just going to wait. This is too expensive, where it will incentivize people with a non-pot system to say, let's build those homes at the lower rate. So the concern that I have is we may actually be losing on quite a bit of revenue if those percentages don't line up with the 70-30 or 75-25. The problem with that is if we're low on that money, that now has to be made up on the rates, which can lead to a higher rate increase in future years because we'll have a shortfall in revenue. So if maybe they could just address, are we actually at that 75-25 or 70-30? That would be helpful. And if that's truly where we've been for the last several years, then great, it'll likely continue. But my concern is with this change, we'll see less people doing potable system. We'll lose that revenue. More people doing the lower revenue could lead to a lower amount of revenue towards paying for the loan. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. No more public comment there. Do I hear a motion that we can further discuss this?
I make a motion to approve ordinance number 02-2026, an ordinance establishing capital investment fees to be charged by the town of Wellington, Colorado for connection to the water and wastewater utility systems.
I second.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, do you have a way to present what was just asked?
I can, so how I can describe it. So I don't have, although not to call on somebody who's unprepared to come up here, but I think Cody Bird's back there, but I'm not going to turn around and look. But one thing I can say is that, and I touched on this at the presentation last week. So the modeling was developed with some very conservative growth assumptions on the utilities end. So we actually have assumed 50%, 60%, 70%, and then 70%, and then 80%. I think that's right. So we're assuming 50% of what is planned growth in this first year, and then we assume we're going to hit 60% or 70%, and then 80%, and then we hold steady. And our modeling assumes that we are going to see 80% of what the planning department's growth assumes, because we can't get caught not having enough revenue on either the rate or the impact fee side. So that does address a portion of Mr. Gator's concern. And then also, yeah, that 75% to 25%. I know to your point, currently our potable, non-potable is like roughly 50-50 in town. I don't know the statistic split offhand on the pipeline of available lots with non-potable versus potable. So
Thank you.
I can't say there was conservatism built into the modeling though, twice over.
Thank you. All right, further discussion. Trustee Cannon.
Thank you. From my experience, I haven't seen a developer not develop a lot simply because it has to use potable irrigation. I know that there's at least 2 developments still on the books. One is Saddleback, which I doubt would have a non-potable system. And then, of course, the PUD, which will have a potable system. So again, we're maintaining that 50% there. I think the fees are defensible. I understand the potable versus the non-potable irrigation piece of that. We typically make those kind of decisions anyway on other aspects of development as well. The impacts on the system and so forth. So, yeah, I'm still in favor of this impact fee.
Thank you. Trustee Daly.
I agree that we need to charge the maximum defensible amount to make sure that development pays its own way. So that's been a standard that we have stood for. And I think that making sure it's fair, but we also have to consider that every extra dollar that goes into impact fee generally is passed along to the person buying the home. And so it does impact affordability. So I understand it's fair. Again, I think it is necessary. And just another consideration that whenever we do have other opportunities to impact affordability, that we maximize those, given that this is something that is very necessary for the town of Wellington.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you. Ms. Clerk, may I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Daly,
Yes.
Trustee Teets,
Yes.
Trustee Wiggin,
Yes.
Trustee Cannon,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason,
Yes.
Mayor Shosse.
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Smith. All right. On to reports. Town Attorney, anything to report? Thank you. Ms. Garcia, Town Administrator.
Thank you. And I'm not going to steal all of Trustee Cannon's thunder. We both attended the legislative workshop at with CML this past week and had some really interesting topics. It was probably one of the best legislative updates that I've been to in a very, very long time. There was a lot of discussion about local control. One of the sessions talked about how to budget when you have no money. And that was really interesting because you heard from a wide variety of panelists who have, from large municipalities to something smaller, that we're all struggling in the same way. The city and county manager from Broomfield said she equates it to death by 1,000 cuts. And how do we increase our revenues as opposed to having to continue to cut projects and things like that. So I'll let Trustee Cannon talk about it a little bit more, but that was a very good session. Hopefully next year more of us can go.
Thank you. Staff communications were in the packet. On to board reports. Trustee Teets.
Just to please keep an eye out in your emails. I know a survey will be going around requesting for dates availability for the volunteer appreciation dinner that'll be coming up. It'll be based off of the most availability. So I won't have a date for you guys until I get a report back on that. Numbers coming in, we've gotten a lot of the bids back, and numbers coming in put the appreciation dinner at about $3,500 to $4,000 for the whole dinner. So fingers crossed that everything continues to go well. Everyone's been super amicable when they send bids in and very flexible on figuring out how to work within a budget. So that's all I have.
Trustee Cannon, time for your thunder.
My thunder. I agree that the legislative workshop was very good this year. The very next day, I was in a 4-hour CML policy committee meeting where we discussed in detail a lot of those legislative issues that were presented on Thursday. The death by 1,000 cuts, I'd like to talk about that. Last year, there was an $800 million deficit in the state budget, and they balanced the budget by basically sweeping off all the low-hanging fruit. This year, they're saying the deficit is closer to $1 billion, which means that the cuts will be harder. And that the harder cuts trickle down to local economies as well, that the money that we receive from DOLA or from other state agencies in the form of grants and so forth may just dry up. So it's a struggle that everyone has. It's a struggle I think Wellington has, trying to take care of this growing city with a limited amount of money in our general fund. So makes some creative budgeting. So anyway, but that was a good session, and I think there's another policy committee since the legislative session is they're actually in session right now. There's another policy committee next month that I'll be attending. I want to make a comment as well. I think a month or so ago, I talked about a piece of legislation that was coming before them, and they were asking for people to testify. And I think people might have gotten the wrong idea by what I was saying. So let me just clarify a little bit. The Colorado Municipal League is there to protect local rights of municipal government, the local control of municipal government. And they protect that by looking at legislation that's being presented down in Denver, and they evaluate, okay, what are the impacts to local government? What are the impacts to those small municipalities or those large municipalities? Are we doing unfunded mandates? Are we putting added burden on staff and on budgets, for example? One piece of legislation, which sounds marvelous, is to put baby changing stations in bathrooms. But it also trickles down to businesses. Well, that's an added cost to our local businesses. It's an added cost to our municipality. So it's not that Colorado Municipal League is looking to kill legislation. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make it amend legislation so that revenue stream is also identified when the legislature puts out those type of laws. I've been part of the Colorado Municipal League really since 2017 and serving on the policy committee, something I love doing. I'm a very, very big advocate for protecting local control, both here in Wellington and in my other community when I was up in Fraser, Colorado. It's important that we have people that represent the town at the state level. And I've been very proud to take that mantle on. So I'll continue to do that. Hope for the next election they'll reappoint me to the Colorado Municipal League. It's something I really enjoy doing. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Bailey.
On March 9th through 11th, it will be the Democracy Summit at CSU. Wellington will be highlighted on the 11th at 1 p.m., 1 to 1:50, talking about our news desert, and it's specific about Wellington. So I hope you guys can join me. There's tons of keynote speakers and wonderful topics. If you want to know more about democracy, this is a place to go. For the Municipal Leadership Academy, last month I talked about we did housing. This next week we're going to be talking about public safety. So I'm very excited to bring back as much as I learn about public safety. What's going on now? What's options for funding right now that we can tap into? What are the best practices across Colorado? Who can we learn that's doing the best and the most for their communities? That's what I'm going to bring back. Okay, election dates to be aware of. March 4th and March 12th are both going to be candidate forums. Both of them require registration. One is from the League of Women Voters, and the other one's the Chamber of Commerce who are supporting those. The other one is on March 27th by Little Monsters, and my understanding is that one's going to be recorded and available for viewing. Ballots are going to be starting to be mailed out on March 16th, and due to the town must be received by April 7th by 7 p.m. I had the honor of attending Mingle on Main with a ton of the community. The show out was amazing. And I got to dedicate and participate in the ribbon cutting of one of our brand new businesses on Main Street. And it was a wonderful, wonderful event full of vendors. I need this board to show up more if we can to these kind of community events. They need our support, especially on Main Street. To celebrate Harvest Farm, they expanded 8 beds with the funding from the opioid abatement fund that we, from the town of Wellington, considered to consolidate with the other communities with Larimer County. They said they're expanding 8 beds, and it was an amazing facility, and it didn't seem like much, but when they talked about 8 beds, that's 8 sons or 8 fathers who get dropped off by their families, and how it impacts their entire family and every subsequent member of that family that's impacted by the amazing work that Harvest Farm does. So I'm really proud of our achievement. I stole some of the ribbon that I hope to, with permission, to frame to celebrate our achievement in supporting an amazing project. So thank you for this board for approving that money to be contributed to that. And thank you, Brian Mason, so much for your participation on that board and making sure that that money is responsibly used. I attended a Night Beyond Limits, which is our kind of like a dance or evening, a celebration for that's accessible and available to everybody. I did silent disco dancing for way too long, and I was sore the next day. I did some other things that were crafts, and there were games. They're amazing, and I really hope more people participate in those, but it was pretty busy apparently. I also attended the Cleveland Avenue Construction Series, which we all are talking about contributing money to. It's a once a month networking event where you can learn about the Cleveland Avenue construction project and the progress. Tons of local businesses showed up, over 40 people. They got to ask questions from staff. It was a wonderful get together. They'll be doing these monthly in addition to other things like concert series and other events to help people to go downtown. But my plea to you is, even if it's inconvenient at any time, make sure you're supporting our downtown businesses. They really are going to rely on our loyalty to be successful during this time. The project's going to be amazing for them in the future, but we need to make sure that they're successful in the meantime. So please do that. And then a last call for Wellorama planning. It's really blossom organically. So if anybody's interested in participating in planning Wellorama of the future, I want to hear from you. I've heard so many amazing stories and fun things. So I'm trying to get everybody together and organized. Thank you.
Thank you. I have nothing. Ms. Clerk, will you please read the title for item G1?
For the purpose of determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations, developing strategy for negotiations, and instructing negotiators pursuant to 24-6-4024E CRS, and for the purpose of receiving legal advice pursuant to 24-6-4024B CRS regarding acquisition of real property by the town to increase public park and open space opportunities, as required by CRS 24-6-402 2D.5, 2A, and 2E. The executive session proceedings will be electronically recorded, and the record will be preserved for 90 days through May 25th, 2026.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session?
I move to enter executive session.
I second.
Ms. Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Trustee Cannon?
Yes.
Trustee Daly?
Yes.
Trustee Teets?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Mason?
Yes.
Mayor Shosse?
Yes.
Mayor, that motion passes.
Thank you. For the public, the board is now entering executive session. Members of the public will be asked to leave, and those online, the recording or Zoom will be ended.